I'm Libby Emmons. I am here with Dominic Green of the Wall Street Journal, and we are at the National Conservative Convention. I really wanted to talk to you about your talk tomorrow that you're giving about post-liberalism and culture and where we are essentially as Western culture.
Thank you, Libby. Well, these are two things, really. One of them is national culture, and I think we could say that there isn't much of a national culture in the United States now.
You think we don't have a culture now?
Not in the sense that it had its say in the 20th century, where you have a unified national culture where people pretty much understand themselves as belonging to a single enterprise, consuming similar cultural stuff. I mean, there are things like Taylor Swift and the Super Bowl, and the team sport of organized politics, of course, is one way of uniting people. But generally, no, there isn't a unitary culture. And that was starting to fray long before the internet appeared, and then really blew it apart. And I think one of the things we keep hearing a lot about here is the effort to rebuild some kind of a common understanding and common purpose. And the other part of the talk is post-liberalism, which is a word which is thrown around.
What does that mean? What is post-liberalism?
Well, it means two things, I think, in the way people use it. Some people seem to use it to refer to the liberal state built by the Democratic Party in the 20th century, and others, such as Patrick Deneen, who wrote a whole book about it, use it to refer to the idea of the exhaustion of the constitutional system of the United States.
Do you think we are in a place where that
I think the first of those is definitely played out, and I think the election results from 2008 onwards show that the American people feel that way as well.
Yeah, it's like drastic extremes.
It's all hope and change, whichever you get. Apart from the 4 years of the Biden interregnum, which was an unusual election anyway, every election since 2008 has been that the swing voters have hoped for a drastic change.
And they never tell you what they want to change from and to exactly. They just scream for change.
Yeah.
Right.
The deeper question of America is a small L, classically liberal civilization, and classical liberalism, like American constitutionalism, these are 18th century ideas. Conservatism, socialism, these are 19th century successors or responses to that. So to my mind, it doesn't make much sense in the United States to say that we are no longer a liberal civilization. My understanding is that most people's political opinions haven't shifted that much, although the parties, the media, the discourse, these things have polarized far more than public opinion.
So what do you think happens now? We have essentially a split electorate, right? We have people who are demanding, as we said, hope and change without any real clear idea of what that means. We have a fractured culture. People are not united in any one specific thing. As you said, we have some mainstream pop culture, but that is not really a unifying force, right? So what happens now with American culture that is being infiltrated essentially by immigrants and different values and cultures from all over the world? Where do we stand as a nation?
Well, I think the one thing which will define the next decade is this, that the digital revolution has reshaped our commercial lives, our social lives, and so on, but it hasn't fully altered our political lives.
Right.
In that politics is, certainly the Democratic Party's campaigns suggest, would rather be a 1990s kind of game.
Right.
And I think the next, this presidency and perhaps the next two cycles will see Silicon Valley fusing itself to government. And at that point, the other shoe really drops in terms of these changes which have been building for a while, because populism is a mood, it's not a program, it's a way of delivering a message. The actual program is something that populism can only open the door to. And I believe that we're now seeing the early signs of that kind of digitization of the government.
So we're seeing that in terms of Palantir is being involved in government. We're seeing the
Doge, for instance.
Doge, a bunch of also a lot lot of data being sort of collated together.
Yeah, these are good and bad
agencies.
things. In that, we have 20th century bureaucracies which don't work. And this is a problem across the West. This is the same pretty much everywhere. America just has more of it because it's bigger.
We're giant.
But it's the same in Canada or Britain or France. Therefore, we have to do something to upgrade the government.
Right.
The threat to privacy is absolutely a real one. And the threat to the private ownership of information is also very, very real, in that copyright law underwrites what we call the creative industries and the arts, all the things which are developing new ideas about how to live. All these things depend on copyright law and royalty payments and so on.
Right.
If you dissolve that, you actually take away a lot of the forward impetus in a society.
Of people to create things.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard that from people who you know, cover different things and create media, and they're saying every time I create something, it just gets stolen.
Yes.
So what's the point of creating it? And of course, that generative impulse has to come from within the self.
You would hope
regardless
so.
of what else
And
is
one
out
of the
there.
things, I mean, I hope to talk about tomorrow is both this kind of question of the macro, how the governing systems we have should be designed to encourage what used to be called human flourishing,
Right.
rather than simply creating new opportunities for tax extraction.
Right.
And how at the micro level, though, people have to be able to create things of meaning to them, but also value.
Right.
And then we are in a phase which is a positive at the moment of lots of new magazines and websites and ventures and think tanks. There's a tremendous amount of intellectual ferment, more on the right than the left now. In the 1990s, it was the other way around.
Yeah, for sure.
And this is the pendulum that just sort of goes back and forward. And so I get a distinct feel here, talking to people, that they feel, okay, now, you know, this is a moment to build something, in that they finally have a situation which they wanted, which is like, okay, we have all the toys and the budget and the trifecta of White House, Senate, Congress. What are we going to do with it?
Right.
And so that's not necessarily a bad thing.
So right now we still have a situation where a lot of the institutions that are sort of tasked with distributing creative material, publishing, Hollywood, you know, television, all of the rest of it, they're still pretty much run by, you know, leftist ideologues and Democrats and, you know, extreme liberals who have been pushing their message out in ever fracturing ways for decades now. And you mentioned that you're talking to people here at NatCon about more opportunities. Do you think that there are going to be more opportunities? Because for years, there's been writers and artists who have essentially been shut out of those infrastructures, right? And like, that's why there's that digital revolution. What happens now that we sort of have politics almost a little bit upstream from culture? Do you think there's going to be a change in the kind of media that we're getting across all of those?
I think so,
areas?
and I think politics and culture actually this goes round and round
Right.
insufferably, like some endless washing machine cycle you can't get out of.
Right.
The two definitely infuse each other. So, in effect, you could look at it this way: a new audience has been created, especially among the young, who are trending sharply more rightwards than any previous generation did in their youth, for at least since the interwar period. I think after the crash and the depression. That's an audience which is not being fully served by the old cultural providers like the big five publishers or Hollywood and so on. So therefore, they will either continue to lose money on projects that they think the young people should be consuming, or they will actually do what they kind of are ready, the big publishers already do, which is create a conservative, you know, imprint.
Right.
Or set up a studio, which is now happening, set up a sort of conservative studio, which will probably make rubbish films, because you can't just astroturf these things out.
Well,
and say,
that's the thing.
Here's some money. It actually, and there is a definite shortage of skills and experience on the right, because people have been, as you're saying, excluded from the big glossy organizations,
Right.
and therefore there's been a big DIY, you know, ethic in it, which I think is a good thing. It's
Yeah,
very
it's
kind
inventive.
of punk rock and all of these, you know,
You
things
create
you
new
should do
forms.
it for yourself.
Yeah.
That's all good. But on the other hand, when it comes to selling it in large quantities, it does actually need to be a finished product.
Right.
And I think one of the challenges now is to start training people to think seriously and be skillful and talented.
How do they get trained? All of our academic institutions as well, all the art schools.
Yes, we have
They're
to build
totally
new ones.
infiltrated. So you think we need new colleges,
Yes,
new
inst-
universities,
Yeah,
new
some of
art
them can be
schools.
fixed and saved. We do, absolutely. And this has happened before. I think each shift of the vibe historically summons new institutions and a new way of doing things.
I would love to see new colleges. There was this whole recent conversation, Howard Lutnick talked about it, talking about bringing in, you know, a lot more Chinese student visa holders. And that went back and forth a little bit in the media, but essentially what Lutnick said was, without bringing in all of these foreign students, the bottom 15% of colleges and universities would just fail. If those just failed, do you think that there would be an impetus from, you know, American academics, et cetera, to
I'm very
create-
happy to let as many
Yeah,
of them as possible
I agree.
fail.
Including all the ones I went
Yeah, I was
to.
going to say,
Yeah.
having been to a few, I can say they're simply not worth the expensive certificates that they're issuing to people. I was delighted to hear that University of Chicago was stopping getting people to enlist for English Lit PhDs, because that might actually return literature to the people,
Right,
rather
what's
than
the
to
point
sort
of
of
an
obscure monkish
English PhD?
sect.
Yeah,
right?
it makes no sense.
And that goes across the board in the humanities. Well, I mean, from what I am told, we don't need scholars of literature. We need electricians
Right.
and plumbers and plasterers and people who can do things that AI cannot do.
And maybe even people who can write.
That would be nice.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
that
always
would
an
be a
option.
bonus.
But you don't learn to write in university.
No.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
I think higher education has, like many other things, kind of just run out of control and become this sort of monster thing that everyone thinks they have to go through, but it's not true. You really don't. And I think reorienting education towards vocational work, and then very much the technical engineering, apprenticeship type science things, all those things we actually need people
Right.
in. You know, it shouldn't be some kind of 19th century finishing school. you
Right,
know.
that's sort of what it has.
No,
been.
and it shouldn't also involve taking out a mortgage on your future at the age of 18, which is government policy to encourage people to do, and definitely has a retarding effect on people's ambitions. That they're not going to take one professional risk when they've already taken on a
Right, a
ridiculous debt
massive-
they can't begin to pay off.
Right, and that leads to artists saying that they need a living wage, and it's like, but you're an artist.
I think if you're
You didn't
able
pick
to
a job.
chance it enough to
Right.
get away with that and actually
Right.
call yourself that, then frankly, you shouldn't push your luck.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. So do you think that there's hope for all of this, for
Yes,
our
there
culture?
is. Yeah, there is.
Do you think
We-
American culture can come back together?
Oh, very much I do. We have got used to being on the losing side, you know, and we got so used to being in opposition that we don't fully understand the extent of our success, and it's an accidental success, really, in that the institutional left has no interest in all of human civilization before about 1980.
Right.
And it's only really interested in everything after that for instrumental reasons to bash people with.
Right. Queer theory.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all of
This,
the
and
rest
so
of it.
everything is theirs for it's there for the taking. The right inherits the ruins, and the question then is, what are you going to build on it?
Right.
And there's a historical pattern there. That's a precedent that happens often, and that's what we're charged with doing. And some of these institutions can be fixed. You know, like New College in Florida, for instance, just needed a change of management, let it go
Right.
bankrupt and refloat it. Other places you simply have to bypass. You know, it probably isn't a mark of a prospective employee who's going to be, you know, good for a company that they've been to, you know, Bennington or
Sure.
Harvard or Yale even.
Yeah.
You know, the market will go where it wants, and people will also build new universities as well. So I am optimistic about that as well. We live, for good or bad, in an age when knowledge and information have been democratized. The only closed information, as far as I can establish, if come across in my research, is when I want to read an academic journal article, and that would then cost $200 for an issue,
Right, it's
or
ridiculous.
membership of a private university library. That's the last gate-kept information that there is. So
Right.
let it go, let
Yeah.
it fall.
And a lot of them just pay to be published anyway.
Yes, and 98% of all humanities articles are never referred to by another humanities article.
Oh my goodness.
So, you know, it is a sort of intellectual Ponzi scheme which serves nobody, and certainly doesn't encourage people to read novels or fiction or history or anything else.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you
So
so
it's
much.
not all bad news.
Yeah, I'm glad it's not all bad news. Thank you so much.